DemocracyNow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Nermeen Sheikh. Our guests in Chicago who are preparing for mass NATO protests this weekend ahead of the largest ever NATO summit. It's happening in Chicago starting on Sunday. Our guests are Bill Ayers, retired education professor at University of Illinois, Chicago, the author of many books, including Teaching Toward Freedom, Moral Commitment and Ethical Action in the Classroom, as well as Fugitive Days, a memoir. We are also joined by Bernardine Dohrn, clinical professor at Northwestern Law School, founded Northwestern's Children and Family Justice Center. They are two veteran activists, well known for their activism in the 1960s, from SDS to the Weather Underground, deeply involved in the NATO protests this weekend. Earlier this week, Human Rights Watch accused NATO of failing to properly investigate at least 72 civilian deaths in its bombing of Libya last year. In a new report, Human Rights Watch said 7 out of the 8 NATO bombing sites were found to lack clear military targets. Fred Abrahams authored the report.
We have questions that NATO has not yet answered, and we're calling for prompt, credible, and thorough investigations to understand why these 72 civilians died. And until now, NATO has taken a position of denial. They refuse to acknowledge that civilians died. They refuse to give information about how they died, and they refuse to investigate. And it's this lack of transparency that's deeply troubling, and I think it will lead to unnecessary civilian deaths in the future if NATO refuses to look at what went wrong and make corrections.
As part of its investigation, Human Rights Watch interviewed survivors of the August 2011 bombing that killed 30 civilians east of the capital, Tripoli.
Why did they bomb me? The NATO forces came to fight in order to protect civilians. Because Libya is under satellite surveillance, it's right in front of them. They can see everything. So we wonder, how is it possible that they could have bombed us? How could they bomb us?
Bernardine Dohrn and Bill Ayers, talk about exactly what the plans are for this weekend involving the protests against NATO. How are people organizing?
Well, there's many organizations are doing demonstrations, holding teach-ins, doing counter summits, and but the focus will be on 2 big marches. I keep wanting to tell you about the National Nurses Association because their march, which has been planned for over 9 months, was focused originally on the G8, which, as you know, are meeting secretly now at Camp David. But they represent, I think, to a lot of us, the spirit of Madison occupation in Wisconsin just a year ago, the notion of what has happened with lower living standards in the United States because of the continuing wars and the permanent war economy we have, and because of the extraordinary gifts seized by the 1%. So I think that their march on Friday is going to start the weekend. There's concerts, the anniversary of Woody Guthrie's death. There's a big music concert. There will be teach-ins and preparation. And then Sunday morning, starting officially at noon, but starting earlier with music and spoken word and cultural events in Grant Park, the site of the Democratic National Convention, 1968. There will be speakers and activities in the park, and then the march will take off at 2 o'clock. So from 11 to 2, there will be activities in Grant Park, and then there will be a march, a permitted, family-friendly march, which will go down toward the south side to McCormick Place, 2 blocks away from McCormick Place, where the NATO meeting is being held. And there the Iraqi vets and Afghan vets against the war have planned to return their medals to the generals.
It's going to be a very spirited march, and it's going to be led by the veterans. And when we get down to McCormick Place, they are going to be on a stand, and the event there will begin with the playing of taps. They will read off their names. It will be a respectful, dignified, solemn event where we call for the end of war and the end of the suffering and some healing. The vets are really the moral heart of what will be going on Sunday.
I want to turn to a recent comment.
Is in this militarized state that we're in.
Bernardine, we wanted to bring in a comment of the Chicago Police Superintendent Gary McCarthy.
These are comments he made about the department's plans ahead of NATO protests.
We've taken the added steps to train the entire department to at least a minimal level to have knowledge of the crowd control procedures that everybody else is getting trained up to a higher level for. Only about a third of the department is going to be used for this event. Those officers are being trained to levels that have been called exceeding the national standards by the people who do this across the country. And the fact is, there's a three-tiered level that we're looking at. We are not only going to be ready, we're going to be more ready than any other city in the country, as per the people who do that training have told us.
That was Chicago Police Superintendent Gary McCarthy speaking to Chicago tonight. Bill Ayers, your comments on what the superintendent had to say.
Well, what they're doing and what they've been doing for months is to kind of deflect attention from NATO onto the idea that somehow the protests create a threat. They've begun to, there's a mass campaign. They're shutting Lakeshore Drive. They're shutting the trains. They're closing exits off the freeways. And they're creating a kind of culture of fear. We have police officers who are friends of ours we run into in coffee shops. They've told us that the training is focused a lot on the danger of the protesters and how you should be careful when you grab one of them because they might have some kind of poison spike in their sleeve or something. I mean, it really is quite nuts. At the same time, they've denied permits, taken permits away, given them back, been very vague about making any agreement with the protesters. Bernardine just said, we insist that this is a family